Okay, module 47, the major psychological disorders. So this module is somewhat long because there's a lot to go through because there are so many psychological disorders to actually talk about in this module. We are going to start out, the major question we are going to ask is, what are the major psychological disorders? That should go without saying because I think I already said we're going to talk about them in this module. So we are going to start out with the anxiety disorders. So each of these we will have like a classification, and then we'll talk about the disorders under that classification. So the first classification are the anxiety disorders. And what we mean by anxiety disorder is it's the occurrence of anxiety without any sort of outside force that is causing it. And it affects our daily functioning. So one anxiety disorder is a specific phobia, right? You have phobias that you may have heard of. A specific phobia is an intense, irrational fear of specific objects or situations. So you may have a fear of spiders, which is arachnophobia. You may have a fear of flying or a fear of heights or a fear of being in closed spaces, right? That's agoraphobia. Or agoraphobia is afraid to go out into open spaces. You could also be afraid to be in enclosed spaces also. So a specific phobia, for example, is that you may have a fear of strangers. A second type of anxiety disorder is a panic disorder. And this is an anxiety disorder that takes the form of panic attacks. And panic attacks can last anywhere from a few seconds to several hours. It just depends on how intense that panic attack is. There doesn't seem to be any known trigger that is setting off the panic disorder. Now, some people, you heard me just mention agoraphobia. Some people develop agoraphobia, which is the fear of being in a situation in which there is no escape. And so if you had a panic attack, you would not be able to get help for that. So that's what agoraphobia is, where you have a fear which escape is not possible, and then you have a fear if you have a panic attack from that. This slide is in your textbook on page, let me get to the right module here. This one is at the top of page 506, and it's a table showing you various phobic disorders, the description, and then what an example may be. So some of these you may be familiar with, right? Agoraphobia, specific phobias to animals, such as insects, right? You may have an extreme fear of dogs or cats or spiders. Specific phobias, which are situational. So you may have a fear of elevators or flying or tunnels or bridges, things like that. So this table is just nice because it lays all them out for you. All the different phobic disorders that you could have, and then it gives an example for each one also. A third type of anxiety disorder is what is called generalized anxiety disorder. And this is the experience of long-term persistent anxiety and worry. So this person may feel this free-floating anxiety that is occurring. It's ongoing. It's not like where you have it for a specific period of time and then it passes. So this person may have, a generalized anxiety disorder for years at a time, where they just have this fear and this worry about sometimes nothing in particular, about everything. Usually the symptoms that you see with generalized anxiety disorder are muscle tension, headaches, dizziness. You could have heart palpitations and also insomnia. This figure is on page 507 in your textbook, and it shows the frequency of symptoms in the cases of generalized anxiety disorder. So you can see across the x-axis at the bottom, that's the percentage of cases in which symptoms occur. And then all the different symptoms are on the y-axis on the left-hand side. So unable to relax seems to have the highest percentage. And then you would go to tense and difficulty concentrating. The least highest percentage of people with generalized anxiety disorder is where they actually faint. So you may know someone with generalized anxiety disorder, and you may be familiar with some of these symptoms that those individuals may have. Another type of anxiety disorder is obsessive-compulsive disorder, or what you may be familiar with being called OCD. This is a disorder that's characterized by both obsessions and compulsions. So obsessions are the thought and compulsions are the behavior, all right? So with an obsession, it's this persistent, unwanted thought or idea that keeps recurring. And in order to get that obsession to go away, you do the compulsive behavior. So it's this irresistible urge to repeatedly carry out some act that may seem strange and unreasonable. But by performing that compulsion, it's the only way to get rid of the obsessive thought. But then the obsessive thought comes back again, which means you have to do the compulsion again, and so on and so forth. It is this vicious cycle that someone with OCD actually has to go through between the obsessive thoughts and the compulsive disorders. Now, if we want to look at the causes for both anxiety disorders and obsessive-compulsive disorder, what we find is that there is no single explanation that fits all cases. Every case could be different per that individual. Research has shown that there could be some genetic factors involved. We also see that there may be an overactive autonomic nervous system. Now remember, your autonomic nervous system involves behaviors that occur automatically, that you are not in control of. And remember, the two nervous systems under the autonomic are the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So with individuals that have anxiety disorders and obsessive compulsive disorders, they have an overactive autonomic nervous system. There may also be some biological causes, and that could be the differences in the brain makeup of these individuals. When we look to a behavioral perspective as a cause for anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorders, this emphasizes environmental factors. So the anxiety is a learned response to stress. Something is stressing you out that's causing that anxiety or that worry, right? And so you're anxious, and that is this learned response to the stress. The cognitive perspective, however, it shows that you grow out of inappropriate, inaccurate thoughts and beliefs about circumstances in a person's world. So you have the behavioral perspective and you have a cognitive perspective for both anxiety disorders and obsessive compulsive disorder. The next thing I want to talk about are the somatic symptom disorders. These are psychological difficulties that take on a physical or what we call somatic form, but there is no medical cause for it. But for the person who has experienced this, it is very real to them, even though there is no medical cause for that. The illness anxiety disorder. This is a constant fear of getting sick, and you are overly preoccupied with your health or with your health. So this may be someone who seems like they're always running to the doctor because they always think that they're getting sick. A third type of somatic, or a second type, excuse me, of somatic symptom disorder is a conversion disorder. This is a major somatic symptom disorder that involves an actual physical disturbance. So it may be your inability to use a sensory organ, or the complete or partial inability to move an arm or a leg. So there's no medical reason why you can't do this. However, it is very real to the person who is experiencing it. So you may feel as though you are truly blind, although you go to an ophthalmologist or a doctor and looking at your eyes, it's not showing that you are blind, but to you, it is a very real symptom. The cause is purely psychological. There is no medical reason for it whatsoever. Now, if we look at figure 3, and figure 3 you can find in your textbook on page 509, you can show that the conversion disorders sometimes produce numbness in a specific and isolated area of the body. And that's indicated by the shaded regions in this figure. People who have glove anesthesia, that's an area of the body covered by a glove, feels numb. However, as I said, that condition is completely biological. There is no medical reason whatsoever that is showing that. The next type of disorders that I want to talk about are the dissociative disorders. Dissociative disorders are psychological dysfunctions that are characterized by a separation of different facets of a person's personality. So you may have formerly heard this called multiple personality disorder. Multiple personality disorder is actually dissociative identity disorder, or DID. It's where a person displays characteristics of two or more distinct possibilities. So within one person, let's say Jane, she may also have a man named Tom, or a 5-year-old girl named Sally, or an 86-year-old woman named Ruth. All 4 of those personalities live within Jane's body. And to her, it is very real. The diagnosis is very controversial in the psychological field. There are a lot of psychologists that feel as though more personalities are brought out as therapy goes on. And so there's a lot of controversy involved in that. Okay, so let's talk about various types of dissociative disorders, besides dissociative identity disorder. There's also dissociative amnesia. And this is a disorder in which significant selective memory loss occurs. So the forgotten material is still present. Remember, once information gets into long-term memory, it is there to stay. However, that material is often repressed. And so sometimes you may know or hear of the term repressed memories. Repressed memories are when something traumatic has happened to you and it is so traumatic that you cannot deal with it. And so your mind or your brain will actually repress those memories so that you don't have to deal with it. Another type of dissociative disorder is what is called dissociative fugue. This is a form of amnesia in which the individual leaves home suddenly and assumes a whole new identity. So one day, Jane may drop her kid off at school, and instead of driving home, she just drives and drives and drives and drives. And she may end up 2 states away, and she may develop this whole new personality where her name is Melissa. Melissa gets a job. She gets a new home. Melissa may even get married and have children. She has no previous memory of being Jane. Those are the dissociative disorders. It says after a period of time, they suddenly realize that they are in a strange place and forget the time spent wandering. The next thing to talk about are the mood disorders. A mood disorder is defined as a disturbance in emotional experience that is strong enough to interfere with your everyday living. One of those mood disorders is major depressive disorder. This is more than your everyday depression or sadness you may feel. Major depressive disorder is the most severe form of depression. You have trouble getting out of bed. You have stopped taking care of yourself. So you're not showering. You're not going to your job. So it is a severe form of depression that interferes with concentration, decision-making, and sociability. Women are twice as likely to experience major depression as men are. What we have found recently is that the rate of depression is increasing across the world. So this is not just a Western world thing. This is occurring across the planet, where there is an increase in depression. So as I said previously, major depression is more intense and lasts longer than normal occasional depression. And it may have no clear trigger. This is an example of a test that you may use for major depression. This is figure 4, and it can be found at the top of page 512 in your textbook. So you are to complete the questionnaire and count the number of statements with which you agree. It looks much better in your textbook. The words kind of jumbled together here at the end on this slide, and I'm not really sure why. But to score it then, if you agree with at least 5 of the statements, including either 1 or 2, and if you have had these symptoms for at least 2 weeks, you may need help from a professional. It may, determine that you are majorly depressed. Now, some other types of mood disorders. One of those is mania. Mania is an extended state of intense, wild elation where you feel extremely happy all the time. You have all this energy. You never go to sleep. I used to know someone with bipolar disorder, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And when she was having her manic episodes, she would go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars. She would not sleep for days. And then whenever she hit that low point of the bipolar disorder, that's when major depression would set in. So bipolar disorder is a disorder in which a person alternates between periods of euphoria, known as mania, and then periods of major depression. Bipolar disorder used to be called manic depressive disorder, but now it's more commonly known as bipolar disorder. A bipolar episode may occur over a few days or even over a period of years. The periods of depression last much longer than the periods of mania. So when you are manic, everything is great. When you hit that low of depression of the bipolar side, things are not so great. You're in that major depression episode, and that's going to last much longer than the manic episodes. Now, it also says here at the bottom, creativity may be increased when someone is experiencing mania, but often there are also periods of recklessness. And that recklessness can lead to emotional and sometimes physical self-injury. Now, this is showing that creativity that occurs during manic episodes. This was a study that was done, and it's showing the number of pieces written by composer Robert Schumann in a given year and how it's related to his periods of depression and mania. Right? So you can see whenever it's really low, that is severe depression, and he actually had a suicide attempt. Here in 1840, he had moderate mania. Then severe depression again through 1844, moderate mania again in 1849. He had another suicide attempt in 1854, and eventually he died in an asylum due to self-starvation. But you can see whenever he was having these manic episodes that he was extremely creative and had some very well-known pieces of work that he composed. All right, let's look at the various causes of mood disorders. We have 4 different possible causes, perspectives, theories, whatever you want to call them. We're just calling them causes here in this chapter. So the first is a genetic and biological cause. A genetic and biological cause. This is where the forms of depression run in some families. And you will notice that for individuals who have major depression, you may also see that a family member may also have major depression. There could also be an internal unconscious conflict that is occurring. This is where you have a feeling of loss, whether that's real or potential, or anger that is directed inwardly towards yourself. However, with this internal unconscious conflict, none of this is reported or backed up by doing any sort of research. So we don't have any research to back up this internal unconscious conflict. There could also be environmental causes. For example, the stresses of life, which produce a reduction in positive reinforcers. If you're being positively reinforced for certain behaviors, you would tend not to see a lot of these mood disorders. And then we also have cognitive and emotional causes. And this is where learned helplessness, we talked about learned helplessness in the previous chapter. This is where learned helplessness falls into place. Also, faulty cognitions, faulty thoughts, or it may be the blunting of emotional reactions. Now, if we want to look at depression in women specifically, because remember, we said that women are 2 times more likely to have major depression as that of men. So one question we have is why depression occurs in twice as many women. And it's a pattern that is similar across cultures, where we find that women are twice as likely to be majorly depressed. What we find is that there may be greater stress for women than men at certain times in life. Perhaps that is getting married. Perhaps that is childbirth. taking care of the children at home on top of having a full-time job. A lot of that does fall on women. There are definitely men who do that, but the majority of cases are women who are in charge of those things. So simultaneously earning a living and being the primary caregiver for her children. What we find with depression as women is that there is a higher risk for physical and sexual abuse. Maybe that is one of the reasons why there is more depression in women. Women typically receive lower wages than men. They also have different coping mechanisms. There may be some biological reasons why women become more depressed than men, and that may be due to hormonal differences and fluctuations, right? You have your menstrual cycle every month, and there's a lot of hormones involved in that men do not go through the same thing. And then potentially, it may also be due to different brain structures that women have as opposed to men. Okay, I want to spend the next couple of slides talking about schizophrenia. So far, we've just spent one or maybe two slides on various disorders. Schizophrenia is such a large, informative psychological disorder that we're going to spend a couple of slides talking about that. So schizophrenia is this class of disorders in which severe distortion of reality occurs. A class of disorders in which there's a severe distortion of reality. There are a number of characteristics that reliably distinguish schizophrenia from other disorders. And we're going to list some of these characteristics. So one, there could be a decline from a previous level of functioning, and also disturbances in thought and speech. They can also have faulty logic, which is referred to as a formal thought disorder. Now, there's formal thought disorders, and some of these characteristics also that we see are delusions, hallucinations, and perceptual problems, inappropriate emotions, and also withdrawal. These are different from some of the other psychological disorders that we have just talked about, that are more specific, so to speak, with schizophrenia. This picture was drawn by someone who had a severe psychological disorder, specifically schizophrenia. And you can see, while it looks like it may be this wonderful work of art, if you look closely at it, there's a whole lot going on here. It looks like here's an elephant, here's perhaps a cat or a fox. Maybe someone is looking through the window. I'm not sure. I mean, if you look in detail, there's all kinds of stuff going on, and none of it really fits together. So that's what you see in this artwork that was done by a schizophrenic. Now, with schizophrenia, we have two different types of schizophrenia. Well, there are more than two different types, but two types that we're going to talk about right now. There is process schizophrenia and there is reactive schizophrenia. Process schizophrenia is the symptoms develop slowly and subtly. Reactive schizophrenia is that the symptoms are sudden and conspicuous. So with process, it's taking a long time and they happen very subtly that you may not notice them at first. However, with reactive, it's very sudden and it is conspicuous. You definitely notice it right away whenever you have these. Now, the DSM-5 classifies the symptoms into two different types for schizophrenia. You have positive symptom schizophrenia and negative symptom schizophrenia. Now with positive, anytime we think about positive symptoms, we think about something good. But that's not what we're talking about with schizophrenia. Positive symptoms are things that are present, things that you have. And negative is things that you are lacking, things that you do not have. So if we look at the positive symptoms in schizophrenia, we're talking about disordered behavior, such as hallucinations and delusions and emotional extremes. These are symptoms that are present for someone who has schizophrenia. They may have hallucinations, they may have delusions, or they may have emotional extremes. However, if they have negative symptom schizophrenia, they may have disruptions to their normal emotions and their behaviors. The difference between the two suggests that there may be different kinds of triggers for both. And it also has implications for predicting treatment outcomes based on whether you have positive symptoms with your schizophrenia or whether you have negative symptoms with your schizophrenia. Now, if we look at the possible causes for schizophrenia, it appears to have both a biological and an environmental origin. So I want to talk about both of these. First off, the biological causes. It is more common in some families, suggesting that there is a genetic factor involved. So you may have a case where there is more than one relative that has schizophrenia. Some researchers suggest that there is an epigenetic factor that is involved. When we talk about epigenetics, it's a way to look at the ways in which genes are expressed and influenced by the environment. You may also have some sort of biochemical imbalance within you, and this is supported by the dopamine hypothesis. The dopamine hypothesis says that it results from excessive activity in areas of the brain that use dopamine. So these areas of the brain that use dopamine, they are overactive. That is the dopamine hypothesis as a cause for schizophrenia. We have also found that in individuals that have schizophrenia, there are some structural abnormalities. Now, if we go back and we look at these genetic factors for schizophrenia, this slide you can find at the top of page 517, and you can see the relationship. Identical twins, remember, they share the exact same DNA. So the risk of developing schizophrenia is 48%. The child of two schizophrenic parents, that drops down to 46%. If you're a fraternal twin, now you drop way down to 17%. The offspring of one schizophrenic parent, 17%. If you have a sibling who has schizophrenia, 9%. A niece or a nephew, and then a spouse, and then an unrelated person. So there is some research to back up, this risk of developing schizophrenia from a genetic basis. Okay, so those are the biological causes. Now I want to move on and I want to talk about the situational causes for developing schizophrenia. Situational causes could include emotional and communication patterns of the families of people with schizophrenia. And what we're talking about is expressed emotion. Expressed emotion is this interaction style characterized by high levels of criticism, hostility, and emotional intrusiveness within a family. So psychologists who take a cognitive perspective on schizophrenia, they suggest that there is this over-attention or under-attention to stimuli in the environment. The predisposition explanations of schizophrenia suggest that individuals who have schizophrenia, they may inherit this predisposition or have this inborn sensitivity to develop schizophrenia. Next, I want to talk about personality disorders. So first off, what do we mean by a personality disorder? It is characterized by a set of inflexible, maladaptive behavior patterns that keep a person from functioning appropriately in society. Inflexible, maladaptive behavior patterns that keep that person from functioning appropriately in society. One of these personality disorders is antisocial personality disorder. These are individuals who show no regard for morals and ethical rules in society or for another individual's rights. Sometimes people with antisocial personality disorder, they are referred to as sociopaths. So they may have a sociopathic personality. These individuals are very manipulative, they are deceptive, and they lack a sense of guilt or anxiety about the wrong things they have done. There is no remorse whatsoever for what they have done. Individuals who have antisocial personality disorder, they are often impulsive and they lack the ability to withstand frustration. And what's interesting is these individuals have excellent social skills. A second type of personality disorder is the borderline personality disorder. This is characterized by problems with regulating your emotions and thoughts. You display very impulsive and reckless behavior, and you're unable to have a stable relationship with another person. So these individuals have trouble determining who they are. They don't have any secure sense of who they are. So what they try to do is they try to rely on other people as a way of helping them determine who they are. They use others to define their own personality or their own identity. They are emotionally volatile, which leads then to impulsive and self-destructive behavior. So far we talked about two different types of personality disorder: antisocial personality disorder and then also borderline personality disorder. The next type of personality disorder is someone who is narcissistic. So this is a narcissistic personality disorder. This is characterized by exaggerated sense of self-importance. These individuals have an exaggerated sense of self-importance. They expect special treatment for others. However, they cannot experience any empathy for anyone else. So they want everyone to do for them and feel for them, but they're not going to return any of that empathy towards anyone else. So those are the three different types of personality disorders. The next type that I want to talk about are disorders that impact children. So the disorders that you may find more often, and they may be more so diagnosed in childhood. So one of those is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also better known as ADHD. This is a disorder that is marked by inattention, impulsiveness, low tolerance for frustration, and a great deal of inappropriate activity. You also have a second type of disorder that impacts childhood, and that is autism spectrum disorder. It used to just be called autism. Now it's autism spectrum disorder. So when someone has this, they fall somewhere along the spectrum. Autism spectrum disorder is a severe developmental disability that impairs children's ability to communicate and relate to other people. They are not able to communicate and relate well to others. A subtype of autism spectrum disorder is Asperger's. So this is a variant of autism spectrum disorder. And the individual often functions at a higher level, but they may experience emotions atypically. And they may have difficulty with everyday social interactions. So they're going to be much more high functioning on the autism spectrum, but they still are going to have some of those difficulties with interacting with other individuals. Now, this is a table that you can find, let's see, at the bottom of page 521 in your textbook. And it shows some of the various disorders that change in prevalence with increasing age. So depression, very low in 3 to 5 year olds, more so with, depression, I see what we're saying here. So 3 to 5 year olds, more so with 6 to 11 year olds, and then even higher with 12 to 17 year olds. That's for depression. When we look at anxiety, again, somewhat low in 3 to 5 year olds, higher in 6 to 11, and the highest in 12 to 17 year olds. However, this changes with the behavior disorders. You find them the highest in 6 to 11 year olds, and then with 12 to 17 year olds, and then finally with 3 to 5 year olds. And this is the disorder that you find the highest in those 3 to 5 year olds, would be the behavior disorders. Okay, I want to spend the next 2 slides, which are the last 2 slides in this module, talking about some of the other disorders that are out there that haven't fell into one of those basic characteristics, those categorizations, I mean. One of those is substance abuse use disorder. And this relates to problems that arise from the use and abuse of various drugs. So psychoactive substance use disorder. You may also have alcohol use disorders. These are among the most serious and widespread of the substance use disorders. Both of these co-occur with many other psychological disorders. You will find with individuals that maybe have one of those other disorders that we talked about previously that they may self-medicate. They may self-medicate with substances such as drugs, or they may self-medicate with alcohol. We also have the eating disorders, and these include anorexia nervosa, bulimia, and binge eating disorder. Those are also listed in the DSM, and they are psychological disorders. They can also have definitely a physiological association with them. We also have the sexual disorders, sexual desire disorders, sexual arousal disorders, and paraphilic disorders. Now, if you want to read more about each of these, the anorexia, the bulimia, the binge eating, or more about the sexual disorders, you can read more about those on page 522 in your textbook. Now, you also have the neurocognitive disorders. These are where you have problems with a biological cause that affects your thinking and behavior. Okay, so those are all of, well, I won't say all of, but those are the psychological disorders that we are going to discuss in this chapter.